Hey guys, look at this, we're back. Same day. Here's a quick review of the Sui, Tang, and Song dynasties. And the Tang and Song being two of the great golden ages of China. We're going to go from 200 to around 1100, 1200 AD. And after the Han Dynasty collapses, there's a period of about 350 years of civil war in China. The dynastic cycle bottomed out, and we don't know what to do, similar to the time of troubles that Russia was going to experience 1,000 years later. And out of this chaos comes the Sui dynasty. Won't last too terribly long, about 40 years, but they will begin to calm the turbulence, and they will help to reunify, bring initial reunification to the empire, and they are going to start digging what is known as the Great Canal, a canal that will go from Hangzhou in the south to Chang'an in the north, the world's longest man-made canal, helping link northern and southern China. And the Sui dynasty will help kickstart this reunification, or what's called reconstitution. We're going to take what was there, we're going to pick the pieces up and put it back together. Or like reconstituting, like, we recycle, and so we melt down plastic and aluminum and we make something new out of it. You are reconstituting it. And while things were going on, it was very violent. Because of the Silk Road, Buddhism is going to spread into China, and the Confucian scholars will keep it going from completely falling, unlike Rome, over in the west. And so the Tang is the next real big dynasty, lasting from 618 till about 907. And the Tang wanted this well-ordered society run by a divine emperor. And because China was so big, all right, we're going to need a large, well-ordered bureaucracy. So we're going to sit and look and say, okay, what made us successful? What should we do? Oh yes, let's go and just do what Confucius did. Let's do what the Han Dynasty did. And because of China's culture and the Silk Road, even though they will be invaded by barbarians, unlike the Romans, the Chinese will be able to absorb their barbarian invasions and actually turn them into Chinese culture. And the emperor's name for this guy, he's your age, a guy named Taizong, who is 16 years old when he becomes the emperor, and he takes the name Great General. You can do that when you are the emperor. Now, not only was he a military conqueror, but he was also extremely smart. I liken him to Alexander the Great. He was intellectual, and he becomes committed to reform, to making his empire efficient. So he will be behind the building of many Confucian schools throughout the empire. Anybody with a sizable population now will have a Confucian school in your village. And like his great Han Dynasty ancestors, he believes in expansion. So he goes westward into Afghanistan. He goes eastward into Korea, and it is the Tang that will subjugate the Silla dynasty of Korea, and he will move southward into Vietnam. And his government will be set up to help the people do things for themselves. Schools were built, literacy was encouraged, and everyone is taught the Confucian classics. He is really concerned with people of ability. That's who he wants to help him run. And so the civil service exam, not only must you have a good score, but a recommendation. The best of the best pass this test, and it allows the government to run smoothly. And then in 960, a cool thing happens. The Chinese, one of the most patriarchal societies in the world, will be run by a female emperor named Wu Zhao. And she furthers the idea of these Confucian schools. We want the best emperors possible. And during this period of expansion, rather than fight and grind it out the whole way, the Chinese used wealth to impress. They laid out their economic power, their economic wealth. And they said, if you surrender to us, we will protect you. You can trade with us. You just acknowledge us as your ruler, pay us taxes, and supply us soldiers, and keep your local government. If not, then we will militarily attack you. And so this peaceful way allows the empire to expand. And the Tang leaders were smart. They took land from the wealthy warlords, the guys causing all the trouble, and they gave it to the needy peasants. Now just getting taxes from one rich noble, I now have 7 or 8 sources of income. And the 7 people that I gave land to are going to be ultra loyal to me. And they said, let's practice laissez-faire capitalism, hands off. What you make, what's extra, what you don't pay me in taxes, you can sell yourself and keep the money. And money will allow people to begin to collect skilled labor in towns and villages. And an urbanization movement grows in the Tang Dynasty. And the thing that breaks feudalism is when an emperor has access to cash or currency that he can then tax and make money off of. That's exactly what happens. Merchants are still on the bottom of society, but they're making money. And it's here that the Great Canal will be enlarged, and the economies of both northern and southern China, where before you couldn't transport goods from north to south and south to north, now you can, making China even more wealthy and more powerful than ever before. And so the Tang Dynasty is going to run great. Warlords and large nobles are being destroyed. The empire is powerful economically, militarily. The Silk Road is thriving. But near the end, we get those evil, greedy emperors who cannot handle their spending. They mismanage the empire and they charge heavy taxes. Coupled with a famine and a drought and an Islamic invasion, the people overthrow the Tang Dynasty in 907. Here is the Great Canal from Hangzhou below Shanghai in the south, all the way north to Chang'an or Beijing, 1,240 miles long. Because the people rebelled, they felt that their proactive action allowed the period in between dynasties to be very short. And here we get the Great Song Dynasty. And the Song Dynasty will last from 960 to 1300. So this is the period of from the heart of the Dark Ages to the Renaissance. And they will build off the success of the Tang Dynasty, but they'll say the Tang just got too big. We need to do things smaller in scale. So they shrink the empire. And one of the things that they do that makes themselves powerful economically is they switch their agriculture from growing wheat, which is very susceptible to climate conditions, too much rain, not enough sun, to growing rice. Champa rice specifically from Vietnam. And growing rice allows you with a little bit of rice to feed many people. And the different irrigation techniques will allow them to grow 2 crops a year. When you grow 2 crops a year, all right, you're going to have a population boom. And unfortunately, the Song will eventually be conquered by the mean, nasty Mongols. And with this free time, now that we're not out there, working all the time, we have time to think and to create inventions. Number 1 will be an elaborate spinning wheel, helping them spin cotton and silk into thread much, much, much faster. And as a result, merchants who we still don't like or respect, but we see as important, will be taking foreign goods westward. While the Song didn't like their own Chinese merchants, they welcomed those from foreign lands who traveled not only by the land route of the Silk Road, but the sea routes along the Indian Ocean as well. And cultural diffusion will take place on a wide scale. Because of the economic and population boom, China will be able to field several cities of over the population of 1 million. In the West, only Rome achieved that for a short time, but it happens in 7 or 8 cases in China. Things in China are going great because of the Silk Road, agriculture, and technology. The social structure will stay the same no matter what. We have the royal family, the nobles, the peasants, and then the merchants. Even though they're wealthy, we don't really like them. They're necessary, but they really don't matter. And one of the things that happens at this time is the dwindling role of women, especially in aristocratic households. Women were seen as delicate objects. So the practice of foot binding gains acceptance, where you take a young girl's toes and you bend them in, kind of curl them and braid them and wrap them with silk really tight till the bones start to grow in that crooked way. They said it makes your foot look like a flower or a tulip petal. Now, most peasant women didn't have this done to them because they still had to work on the farm. But foot binding is terrible. This is the big toe. These are the other toes growing into the bottom of the foot. So they wear these here's the thickness of the foot down to the tiny toes like elf shoes. It is very, very painful. The technological advancements are wide. They began to get a clock that had different gears, that a water-powered clock would allow them to tell time. My favorite is the seismograph. It was a big giant porcelain ball like a weeble wobble, and if it detected a tremor, there were different dragons. And the more powerful the tremor, the larger marble dropped out of the dragon mouth. So it didn't give you a lot of warning, but it gave you a little bit of heads up. One of the biggest things is the Chinese claim to create the first wooden block printing in world history, the first movable type increasing literacy. And the Chinese began to write down their medical techniques in books and began to perfect the use of acupuncture. Unfortunately, the Song Dynasty will fall to the armies and the family of Genghis Khan, bringing an end to the Song Dynasty. This is a different versions of a Chinese water clock with circulated water with a pump and different wheels, and they turned those gears so you had a constantly revolving clock that allowed you to tell time. Here is one of the dragon head marble, dropping the marble into the mouth of a frog seismographs. And here is acupuncture and some pictures of Chinese characters in movable wooden blocks. So you don't have to constantly handwrite paper after paper after paper. You can make one copy over and over again like an old Xerox machine. And so the Mongol Empire of Genghis Khan and his Khanates will start here. We will go here into Iran, Afghanistan, down here into Saudi Arabia, and up here is the Golden Horde, going from Vienna, Austria, down to the Arabian Sea, clear across the Pacific Ocean. It is enormous. And the Mongol dynasty is known as the Yuan dynasty. And it will be led by Kublai Khan, one of Genghis Khan's grandsons, in 1279. And the Yuan dynasty is the first non-Chinese dynasty in history. He is the first non-Chinese ruler in the great history of China. The government style of the Mongols is different. They fiercely resisted Chinese culture and forced themselves to stay separate. They had different laws for Mongols than they did Chinese. But the Mongols occupied all the high governing offices. Now, Chinese officials were able to stay in charge at the local level, but the federal government was run by Mongols. Kublai Khan will add another 135 miles to the Great Canal. Here's part of it right here, getting it to its 1,240 mile length. And one of the things that he will be in charge of, especially because of the empire, is what's called Pax Mongolica. It's like the Chinese version of Pax Romana. Pax Mongolica is this era of peace and prosperity that'll go from the Koreas all the way over to Constantinople. From Chinese porcelain to gunpowder to silk, porcelain, you name it, it traveled from China down into India, over into the Middle East, over into Constantinople. Pax Mongolica built a global interconnected highway. It is at this time that Marco Polo claims he made it from Venice all the way over to China. That most likely did not happen. He said he stayed in Kublai Khan's court for 17 years. He probably made it part of the way, maybe to India and things of that nature. Because if you look at what he wrote in his book, some of his descriptions are inaccurate. Most likely he gathered stories from other people and wrote them down. There's probably no way he made it all the way over there. However, we know an Islamic Moroccan merchant named Ibn Battuta did. And Ibn Battuta will really validate the term Dar al-Islam. He will travel throughout the Islamic world, every place Islam was practiced, from Spain to Africa to the Middle East, all the way over to China. He will travel nearly 73,000 miles and visit 44 modern countries. So he is the real traveler that describes what went on in Kublai Khan's court, where Marco Polo made a lot of it up. Kublai Khan will see near the end of his empire with his two ill-fated naval disasters trying to attack Japan. He spent a lot of money not only on his military, but public works projects. And when those kamikaze destroyed them, well, he ran out of money. Kublai Khan will die out in 1294. But his family members argued once again who was going to replace him, and many people of China had become dissatisfied and angry with Mongol rule, so they will rebel. And faced with not only a rebellion, but famine and flood and disease, the Mongols are overthrown. There is also the aforementioned Black Plague, which will devastate Europe and Asia, and things just, well, they weren't good. So that is a quick review of the Sui, Tang, Song, and the Yuan Dynasty. Hope you guys like it and do well on that test over break.